The title of our presentation is How to Expand a National Park, Case of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Take it away, Ellen.
All right, well, thank you. Is the audio okay? Okay, excellent. Well, I will share my screen in a sec, but thank you for inviting me. Actually, you invited Jeff Gray, and on my next slide, I'll tell you why Jeff isn't here. And I really had planned on being there, and I'm really sorry that I'm not in Tobermory. I'm sitting in a very empty office building at the moment. But I had a minor complication with my government passport, and that it expired within 6 months. So it was actually a major complication, and they wouldn't let me come. So today, and let me pull my PowerPoint up. Let's see. All right, can you see my screen? Okay, so today what I want to do is really tell the story of a federal program that protects some of the most ecologically and culturally significant resources in the United States. I want to talk about an area in northeastern Michigan where there was fierce opposition to a federal designation of a national marine sanctuary. And I want to talk about how NOAA, the state of Michigan, and the small city of Alpena, Michigan, working together really found ways to create what would have been considered impossible during the designation process. So I was asked to talk about the Thunder Bay expansion, and I will get to that, but I think what's most important is to tell the story of why we were at a place where we could do the actual expansion. And I have to warn you that when I was preparing for this and learning about Fathom 5 National Marine Park, my mind started churning about opportunities to better connect these two marine parks. And I was even looking, you're just, directly east of Thunder Bay, and that maybe at some point we could have a contiguous boundary. So Jeff Gray is not here. Jeff is the superintendent of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Jeff came to this forum a couple years ago and really, really enjoyed it. But what's happening up in Alpena today is the first day in a project to map the lake bottom. And this is an autonomous surface vehicle known as BEN, which stands for Bathymetric Explorer and Navigator. So, one of the things that we've been able to do really well up in the sanctuary is to bring technology to better characterize, monitor our sanctuary resources. So this was an article in today's Alpena News. Okay, so let me talk about the National Marine Sanctuary System. In square miles acreage, it's very large. However, in the number of sites, we have 13 national marine sanctuaries and 2 marine national monuments that we co-manage with Department of Interior. So unlike the Park Service, which has a lot of units, we're actually pretty small. I think what's most important to talk about, like what our program is that we're place-based. However, every sanctuary is different. We don't come in with a model of, saying we're going to do this in this sanctuary because we do it somewhere else, because every place is different. Despite the name, sanctuary don't mean that people can't use the areas for fishing, diving, shipping, and other recreational commercial activities. We do promote public access in most of the areas. So. The model of sanctuaries, again, is much like national parks, in that our goal is conservation and preservation. We do this through resource protection, which can be some like mooring buoys that I'll talk about for Thunder Bay, but there are federal regulations associated with every national marine sanctuary, so there is a regulatory component. Probably the most important aspects of our sanctuaries are the education, research and monitoring, and community engagement. So I thought I would just give you a very quick tour through our system. And I'm doing this because, part of the value, like why does a community want a sanctuary? And, part of it is the resources that we bring, but it's also because it's on the national map with these incredible places. So we have a campaign, whatever, a part of our program called Earth is Blue, where we do videos and photos. I'm just going to show you some of the places around the country that, when you're sitting in Alpena or elsewhere, this is what you think about when you think about our sanctuary system. That is not a Great Lakes wave. Although it could be. So Manta Ray and the Flower Garden Bank Sanctuary off the coast of Texas, down in the Florida Keys, really indicating that we do allow recreational activities. Whale watching and Stellwagen Bank off the coast of Massachusetts. The first sanctuary was the USS Monitor, the old Civil War ironclad. And I'll end up back at home in across the lake in Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. So let me just talk about, I don't want to rehash the whole designation because it's not that great interest to you, but it's important to understand some aspects of it because it really led to our ability to expand it. We tend to take a long time to do things. In this case, we started in 1991 and ended up with a designation in the year 2000. Our proposal was to enter into a partnership with the state of Michigan for joint management of, in this case, maritime heritage resources. Now, what's important for us in the United States, Great Lakes waters are state waters, so we don't go in. Actually, it's unlike the Park Service. I think not unlike the Park Service. We do have a co-management arrangement with the state, so that was a very critical part of our designation process. So in talking about, in looking at our original proposal to the public, we had three boundary alternatives. A was the existing state underwater preserve, 288 square miles. B was the county line, so Alpena County. And C was 808 square miles, which had maritime heritage markers as the north and south that had lighthouses, which to us was more symbolic than having county lines. So NOAA's preferred boundary was 808 square miles. We did not end up with that, but there were, as I mentioned, there was a great deal of opposition to the sanctuary. Some of it was just general anti-government sentiment. There were concerns that we would restrict access, that we would put limits on fishing and diving. We would charge a user fee, which I know in Canada you do that, but that's not something we do in sanctuaries. That we would change the terms of management after designation, kind of the foot in the door. Like, okay, you say you'll do this, and you'll designate it, but we know that in the next year you're going to tell us we can't fish there. You're going to tell us we can't use the waters that we've always used. And then from the state government perspective, just a lot of concerns about the federal-state partnership and concerns that we would interfere with state rights. So the opposition was expressed in buttons, say no to NOAA. During our public comment period, I just took a couple, dear sirs, I'm against it. I think it's a waste of money. The wrecks are already protected by the state. Recognizing some of our zoning efforts in the Florida Keys, I see no need for creating a similar level of government and environmental bureaucracy. Alcona County has no need for a national marine sanctuary. So really, and there was actually a referendum on the Alpena County ballot, and 70% of the people said no, they don't want it, and 30, like I said, okay. One thing we did that really helped us then and now is we established an advisory council that's comprised of, it's actually part of our statute, the National Marine Sanctuaries Act, that we can and should establish advisory councils. So it's just a wonderful way of bringing people to the table, diverse set of interests, and talking through it. This was something that was absolutely essential in the Thunder Bay designation process because it made people accountable. They ended up making recommendations to NOAA that carried a lot of weight. And as you'll see, they played a role in the expansion process as well. So we ended up with, we knew we had to negotiate, ended up with a smaller boundary, what I call the safeguards, which is what the advisory council recommended to us. So, if there's a sanctuary, tell us that you won't regulate fishing. Tell us that you won't have a user fee. So we took their recommendations and put that into a memorandum of agreement between NOAA and the state of Michigan. Under our statute, the governor has veto authority. For the first time and probably only time, a state committed money to the co-management of this. And then finally, there was a 5-year, quote unquote, sunset provision where after 5 years, NOAA would repropose the sanctuary to the state. And if things were as bad as they thought it was going to be, the state had a way out. So we reached agreement, and at long last, we had a shipwreck sanctuary. So what I want to do next is just talk about some of our programs that really created the change in sentiment about NOAA and what it would mean to have federal government interference or federal partnership opportunities in Alpena. So kind of in reflecting what it means to Alpena now, first you should know that Alpena was an industrial, it was a port city. And like many of these communities around the Great Lakes, it was suffering. So that's where we were when, we came in 2000. So what it's done, I talked about the national recognition. It's pretty cool to have Alpena on the same map as the Florida Keys and Olympic Coast and Hawaiian Islands. It has become a destination. I think there were a lot of people who were skeptical about that would really turn out to be the case, but it has. And northeastern Michigan has, in the state of Michigan, is a very underutilized area. If you would have asked people 20 years ago, have you been to Alpena? Most would say no. And why would we go there? And that's not the case now. We have invested in the community between our visitor center, Maritime Heritage Trail. We actually put a hyperbaric chamber at the hospital for diver decompression, but thankfully it's not used much for that. But what it is used is for wound care and other medical purposes. So that wing of the hospital now has shipwreck photos in there. So kind of not a partnership that one would think about between a sanctuary and a community. The kids in Alpena, the students, have become really leaders in underwater robotics. They, and I'll talk about this in future slides, but this is what the kids do. This is how they grow up now, thinking that everyone should be able to design an underwater robotic. And then I think in terms of the community, they're on the Great Lakes. It's their backyard, but they didn't really know about it they weren't making the connections to their history as much as they do now. And finally, there's just a sense of community pride. When I first started working in Alpena, there was not a lot of hope. It was just a really difficult time. And what I've seen, the transition to a place that is willing to hope, to take risks for making their community a better place. And I really feel like we have been a critical part of that. Okay, so this is our Maritime Heritage Center. I think what's sort of interesting about this, it's the paper mill that had been in existence for 100 years, closed down 3 months after we designated. So in December of 2000, the paper mill closed down. A lot of jobs lost. There was a guy from Alpena who had made a lot of money away from Alpena and came back to invest in this area. So this, so we're on the site of an old paper mill. So it's for interpretation. This tank, that round thing you see there, was originally the settling pond for paper at the paper mill. And now we use it for dive training, for the Underworld Robotics Festival. But, it's just fun to see the reuse of this area and really what it means to the community. We do get about 100,000 visitors a year going through there in a community of 10,000 people. So destination, we have, roadside, we have highway signs promoting the glass bottom boat, the museum. We have community events. This is our annual 4th of July Maritime Festival, where we have cardboard boat regattas. People do line up to see it, and I do love the name of that, the wishful sinking. As there is in Tobermory, we have a glass bottom boat. This is an interesting partnership in that it docks right in front of our visitor center. We sell the tickets through our visitor center, and we take a cut of the ticket price to support our programs. We often send out either staff or volunteers on the shipwreck tours to do the interpretation of the shipwrecks. I mentioned the Great Lakes Maritime Heritage Trail. This is an effort that really will bring the communities that are part of our expanded boundary into the sanctuary. So they will get signs in this very large area. As I mentioned, there is recreation allowed and promoted in the sanctuary, whether it's diving, snorkeling, kayaking, fishing. And I think we understand that diving, frankly, there aren't that many people who want to dive in the Great Lakes, who want to dive in cold water. So, one of our philosophies is that we need to bring that diving experience to the non-divers, which we do in a number of our education programs. So a couple years ago, there's this group called Stand for Great Lakes, and their thing is raising awareness of the Great Lakes. And I think their first lake that they attempted was crossing Lake Huron. So they went from Alpena, and I don't know exactly where they ended up 28 hours later, but I'm sure you recognize that. So I love this. I love this partnership, and again, I'm thinking back to this possible contiguous boundary at some point. So education is really, it's just so core to what we do. We're a place-based sanctuary. We need to engage all ages with this special place. So whether it's a science on the sphere inside our visitor center, they're measuring a shipwreck on the shore there, getting kids out on boats, or doing water quality sampling. And I should say, even though it's a shipwreck sanctuary, we do feel that it is our responsibility to raise awareness of the Great Lakes. So we do talk about ecology and Great Lakes protection. This is the underwater robotics competition that takes place every year. You can see we're using the dive tank there. We hosted an international ROV competition, brought in, I can't remember how many countries, but we had kids from all over the world coming to Alpena, Michigan, which is one of those, pinch me, I can't believe that we're hosting an international event. So I want to show you this video, and I hope it works, but there's this amazing teacher at Alpena High School who has developed this class. So let's hope this video works.
Going through your list of archaeology observations one more time. Make sure that you have as much.
Can you guys hear that? Okay.
Much information on each wreck as possible.
My name is John Capeless. We're at Alpena High School. Shipwreck Alley is a class that was designed to cover all aspects of marine sanctuary operations. So what makes Shipwreck Alley exciting is that I can create some pretty powerful learning opportunities for the students. The class is really built around earth science. This is an earth science classroom. Shipwrecks run aground, so we can talk about some of the unique geology. Then we move on to meteorology. Storms, fog, wind, waves, they all cause shipwrecks.
Imagine yourself out on the Great Lakes in November.
Talk about resources, natural resources in the region. Then we do some archaeology, which really opens up opportunities to work with the sanctuary. And in the end, we tie it all back into lake ecology and how the lakes are changing and how we keep the ecosystem thriving.
We're looking for a propulsion type, right? So if we want to identify the ship, we have to figure out if there's any machinery that indicates it's a sailing vessel or a steamer.
I couldn't wait to connect the sanctuary with my students because I knew they could create opportunities for my students that I couldn't do alone.
Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary is like a museum under the sea.
Everything that we do that's really cool in this class has marine sanctuary hands on it. They feed us a lot of the real world information that brings that learning alive, and they create the fieldwork opportunities, or they help me find fieldwork opportunities.
Check out one more, right? If we have time for one more. Yeah.
This particular class, Shipwreck Alley, doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. We started with a pilot program of 30, one class, 30 students. The next year we went to 3 classes, around 90 students, and then we went over 200 students the third year of the program. The idea that we're exposing 2/3 of every kid who graduates from Alpena High School to Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and its mission and the positive effect it has on the community, I think that's a powerful thing. I love the fact that I get to partner with the sanctuary. Every person on that staff is positive and has a can-do attitude. Things get done around there. It's been an amazing thing for our community.
Okay, so that was done a couple years ago, and since then, actually this was the first year they've done it as a project-based learning. So there's a class, and their entire class is integrated with English and science, and they're using Thunder Bay as a case study. So, for education, we, as I mentioned, we try to have, for the non-divers, the experience of shipwrecks if you can't actually be there. So we've done a couple live webcasts. This is it's more project-based when we have the opportunity. This was back in 2011, where we do it from a shipwreck and have it be interactive. We're able to do it, some of it underwater. The project I showed at the beginning of the presentation with the autonomous vehicle, we're actually doing some live distance programs from that as well. I think we had anticipated that we would do this more, but it's very time intensive and financially intensive. So I think we're going to try to find a way to make it a more regular, but we have done this once in a while. I'm going to show you one more film because the film festival is something that's become, again, a way to get people to Alpena in January, which is not easy, but just connecting people with the larger system, with other Great Lakes and with the ocean. This is a trailer for our film festival. I love that trailer. I just find that so inspiring and just, connecting people to the oceans and Great Lakes and what special places they are and why we need to care about them and protect them. So speaking of resource protection, shifting gears a little bit, we do have a mooring system for all of our sanctuaries that we really find to be the most effective way of protecting these fragile resources. I think we have 40-some buoys that we put out, and there's an interactive website that gives information about all these. I mean, this is a pretty major effort to put these in and take these out every year. But again, I think this is probably more important than having the federal regulation of shipwrecks, protecting shipwrecks. And finally, the exploration, research, monitoring, Dr. Bob Ballard in the upper left there, who came in 2001 for our first expedition and is involved in the one with this autonomous vehicle that I talked about at the beginning. We have really an amazing team of divers, very, very accomplished at Thunder Bay and within the sanctuary system. Okay, so just to close up this part about communities, the Alpena went through a branding exercise, and they, it took them a while to think about what their community means. I've talked about this shifting perception of their community, and they came up with this Sanctuary of the Great Lakes, marine, body, and soul. And their definition of sanctuary is, what you would consider, but I love this, number 4, Alpena, Michigan, as definition of a sanctuary. And this is their most recent visitor guide. So they really have just, changed. The community has just changed. So, okay, now to expansion. So I mentioned that we had the 5-year review as a condition of the original designation. So, in 5 years, people started weighing in. So the Chamber of Commerce says impacts fit directly into the Chamber's mission of advancing economic development, quality of life. Therefore, we give full support not only to the sanctuary, existing, but promoting boundary expansion. The Advisory Council, which was so key originally, also passed a resolution saying that they recommended that we expand. Their resolution was 3,662 square miles, which we ended up going larger than that. And then a number of editorials and press. The model is, sanctuary is a model to emulate. Do you remember all the opposition to Thunder Bay back in the late 90s? Thunder Bay, we have exceeded everyone's expectations. So just, it's just kind of a love fest and something that, I bear the scars from Thunder Bay, the designation process, and it's just, I am never ceases to amaze me. This turnaround is so incredible. So in 2005, I think we go in 9-year increments. 2005 was the first idea to, officially promote expansion. We have, the way we designate sanctuaries is administratively, so it's not most of them are not congressionally designated. We did look at ways of getting Congress to designate it. That didn't really work. So we went through the administrative process that we did originally, and ended up with a sanctuary of 4,300 square miles, or over 11,000 square kilometers. And it goes, to the border with Canada. We ended up adding from the original recommendation from the Advisory Council because there were some more shipwrecks that really were worthy to include that. It was, so why? I've talked about the programs that have made such a difference in the community. The other smaller communities in the counties south and north of Alpena County, they wanted a piece of the action. The state of Michigan was long, they were long over their concern about the expansion. So we expanded officially in 2014. Not surprisingly, it's a much bigger area, and we have to figure out how we're going to actively manage it and bring programs to the other areas. So finally, I just want to spend a few minutes talking about our new nomination process for sanctuaries. It used to be that NOAA would come in, like Thunder Bay, and say, we want a sanctuary here. And the people would say, well, we're not sure we want you to bring a sanctuary here. So now we have a new process where communities can nominate to become a sanctuary. They have to demonstrate that there are resources of national significance. There are opportunities for researching possible partnerships, and that there's community-based support. They send us the nomination. Our ending point here is that we add it to an inventory that doesn't ensure that they'll get a designation, but it makes them eligible to become a sanctuary at some point if NOAA moves forward. So my final slide here is just kind of what I'm doing around the region. And I'm really sorry I wasn't able to hear Damon's talk because I have been working with the community over in Shawinigan Bay, Apostle Islands. But we have 2 areas that are on our inventory, or 2 that we've started designation process in Wisconsin a couple years ago, 2 weeks ago, one in Lake Ontario, Pennsylvania on the inventory, and working with a couple others. So my job brings me around the Great Lakes region quite a bit, but I think it's the model that we had in Alpena and looking at the successes that really led us to this new community-based nomination process. So that is what I had. Happy to take questions and interested. Sorry, I didn't hear, but and compare and contrast.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.